M. Greer Kidder was a San Francisco journalist known for his controversial and inflammatory articles. His themes included atheism, socialism, anarchism, spiritualism, the Virgin Mary, and women's suffrage. His article entitled Women's Suffrage was published in January of 1909 in California's premier magazine, the Overland Monthly. And influenced by the writing style of his older contemporary, Mark Twain, it is replete with cynicism, sarcasm, irreverence, and exaggeration. Interestingly, later in 1909, the Petaluma suffragist Anna Morrison Reed chose to reprint Kidder's suffrage article in her local publication, The Northern Crown.
It's as easy for those in power to believe God put them in it as for those out of it to believe God had mighty little to do if he did. Nobody bosses long without thinking he bosses by divine right. Arrogance's first conviction is what is gained by force is sanctioned by justice. There is but a step from sublime insolence to ridiculous inspiration. Every tyrant is satisfied of his infinite usefulness. All of this fits woman as well as man. His insolence is no more the result of his arrogated importance than her innocence the consequence of her actual impotence. But what she doesn't because she can't doesn't justify what he does because he can. No one should have much power because no conscience can withstand the sophistry of much self-interest. Excessive power is the lullaby of conscience. Absolutism, the narcotic of principle. The powerful are just only because they are not powerful enough or haven't been powerful long enough. Woman's suffrage means as much for man as for woman, as much for husband, father, son, as for wife, mother, daughter, as much socially, morally, matrimonially, as politically, as much as the minority knows it means and the majority thinks it doesn't. Then why is woman denied the franchise? Because it takes a man of much sense to see that a woman of more sense has any sense. Catch on? Besides, it's feared that if she begins to improve things, she will improve them as unpleasantly as suddenly. Few like change, fewer being yanked into respectability. Most of us like to taper off. When a conviction arrives butt end first, its target is generally a crank. Man's brutality to woman is so old that it is a precedent, which goes to show that age, rather than justice, makes precedents, that any old monotony sprouting moss is a model. Until lately, no woman could claim her rights and man's respect. She could own nothing. Her fate was robbery, piety, patience, submission, and motherhood. Her husband stole everything she had but her children and her God, everything, in short, worth stealing. Women were not beaten, except out of what they had. When I think of man's treatment of woman, I wonder he is no worse. What can be expected from a neglected mother but a son who neglects his wife? Why are most divorce applicants women? Because in many cases, incompatibility, truthfully translated, would make the doom of the Athenian virgins offered to the Minotaur a honeymoon by comparison. Don't you know half the men escape zoology by only 2 legs? What protection has an abused wife? Divorce? Is anything more combated? Is any step more unpopular? As to the stigma resting upon the children, what kind of children are bred from a couple that should be divorced? Born and bred in that nursery of conservative chivalry, the South, I thought woman was created to grace the home and ornament society. It didn't occur to me that she could do both without remaining a petticoated appendix, a social rudimentary organ. Is there anything about pots, pans, and children conducive to profound contemplation? Most people think because woman is the housekeeper, she should keep in the house. As she is the only one who can have a baby, she should do nothing but have it. Why let woman vote? Because while thinking her mentally unfit, We herd and drive to the polls myriads of dirt-encrusted, rum-soaked, vote-selling, ragamuffin ignoramuses we know to be mentally, morally, and socially more unfit and as much below her as a dunghill below the Mount of Transfiguration. The change, of course, will be no panacea. But like Luther's Reformation, it will necessarily be an improvement because it will be a change. Something better because something else. If ever a tune needed variation, it is the one-string fiddle, filthy old political ragtime we are dancing to. Why should voting lessen women's charms? More than supporting a no-count husband lessen them. Did you ever notice that no matter how much a woman usurps a man's place, no matter how much she does a man's work, she is never unwomanly until she claims man's privileges? There is no disgrace in self-defense, no degradation in claiming your own. I am for woman in this fight because she stands for justice, womanhood, and decency. Disinfectants are one of my strong points. Nothing more irritates arrogance than long-suffering humilities suddenly claiming rights, exhausted patience showing impatience. But the fight rages. Victory is inevitable, and the result of that victory, every old cesspool will be stirred to its bottom. Satisfied of woman's inclination for good, why not afford her more chance to indulge her inclination? Man's political example would corrupt her. Huh, what solicitude! I think if her character has withstood his social example, she might escape the taint of his political association. It would impair her femininity. I wish they would let up on her femininity. I'm sick of it. Is she doing man's work on beggar wages to intensify her femininity? Driven like a drudge in a department store to prevent the inroads of masculinity? I don't want woman to rule man, only fixed so man can't rule her. Why should a petticoat be the badge of servitude? A pair of breeches the oriflamme of divine right? My sister, I have kept my word. I have spoken. So there.